Hi everyone. Today I get to talk to Kimberly Belle about her book, The Marriage Lie. And this book is out. She's got a new one coming out, which we're going to talk about. But today I really just want to talk to her about this book because it was crazy, crazy good. I loved it. And I was like, we need to talk about this book first. I know you've got a new one coming out, but we have to talk about this one first. So she said yes, and I am so thrilled she did. And everyone, here is Kimberly. Hi everyone, I am so excited today to be speaking with author Kimberly Belle, and we're going to be talking about her book that's been out for just a little bit called The Marriage Lie, and there it's out. Oh, it's out in paperback now. Awesome. Thank you so much, Kimberly. And, after me begging you to come on, I'm so happy that you agreed.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. I
Oh
love
my
talking
gosh,
about
this
marriage
book.
life.
It's so good. I was talking to some other authors about this genre because it's kind of like this new, every time I think I know genres, they come out, Amazon comes out with these sub genres. And there's this new kind of domestic suspense, I think
Yeah.
they call it.
Yeah.
And, instead of just a thriller, just a normal thriller, it's this
Right.
own sub category. And
Mhm.
I am loving this genre. I don't know if it's my age, and it's this is, we're moms and we're wives and been through divorces and been through, and then we really attach on to this family dynamic, and it's just crazy. And
Yeah.
this book is not, this is a crazy book. And I was on your website and you were like, I'm still married to my husband of how many years? And I was like, okay,
Bye.
good. Good.
Yeah. But I think you actually hit the nail on the head when you said, moms and wives, because it's really this domestic stance. It's also about it's written, a lot of them, most of them are written by women, and also kind of with women in mind. It's about women like you and me, who are moms, who are wives, who are living their life, a normal, happy, everyday life, and something horrible happens to them. And it's kind of caught fire, I think, because of the readers who recognize themselves in these stories. Like, gosh, that could happen to me, or it could happen to someone I know, and what would I do in that situation? And it's really fodder for a lot of discussion at book clubs and talks like these. So it's definitely an a popular genre, and one of the genres that I think has some sticking power.
I do too. And, I think it's really difficult to write because as a reader, and especially since I do these now, I really pay attention to how the story is going, how
Hmm.
it's kind of, and then I try to see if I can figure it out.
Yeah, everybody does.
Yeah,
Yeah,
everybody,
that's
it's
part of the fun of it too, I think.
it is the fun because it's no fun if you can. So you have to trick us into thinking that we can figure it out, but then we can't figure it out. And I want to tell you that I love, because I don't do spoilers, so I'm going to talk around just so everybody knows, because I why would I do that? I hate hearing spoilers. I hate when people do that. But I love how the beginning and the end, because I always read it through and then I go back to the beginning. That's how I read these kind of books, especially thrillers, because I want to see how you set it up to see what I missed, kind of, not missed, but where those clues lay.
Yeah.
And to me, your first sentence and your last sentence, which I find very rarely in books, I was like, wow, she really did that. She was so good at that. And I was amazing.
Well, thank you.
Well, first of all, I love your last sentence, and don't anybody fast forward to her last sentence. Read the book, but
Yeah, read the book, because you got to read the book,
because you won't even care anyway. Yeah. So just read the book. But I just love the way that I don't know, because I've talked to some screenwriters I usually talk to authors now, but in the beginning I was talking to a lot of screenwriters, and they were saying that that's how they look at a good story, is if the beginning and the end, they'll look at that on a screenplay. which,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like maybe, I hope turns into a movie, because this would be a
Yeah.
crazy movie.
Wouldn't that be awesome, right?
It would really be awesome, but it is the perfect screenplay, which I don't see in novels very often, in any kind of novel. And I was like, I wanted to tell you that, like, from what I've learned, and it's not that much, but, you know, from what I've learned, that's one thing that they really look at, and you did it. So
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I get a lot of comments from readers, most of them overwhelmingly good, about that last sentence. They were like, "What? I didn't see that coming. I couldn't believe it. I kept turning the page like, where's the next chapter? And there wasn't one." But you know, I do think you're right, and I did that kind of on purpose, maybe subconsciously a little bit. But you know, it's always good to mirror something in the ending with something in the beginning. It kind of gives that extra little punch at the end.
yeah, and for any new authors who are listening to us, I mean, that is something, because I'm finding, as I'm out there in this world of like readers, you know,
Mhm.
I know some crazy readers. Okay. I think I'm a crazy reader, but I actually know people way crazier than me. And we're like a tough bunch of
Yeah.
people, of readers.
Yeah.
You know, you have your normal everyday, maybe people that go out, but as readers, like, we expect a lot out of a book. You
Yeah.
know, and when you can, like, you know, when people, I pay attention, like, don't pay attention to those weird Amazon people that are like giving a review and they're not, because like, I know the serious ones, I can tell, because I know
Yeah.
so many people that
Yeah.
do it, and we're a hard bunch to like love. And then once we do, we're like, oh my God. And those are the ones that I understood that they got it, you know, and
Yeah.
it's the experienced, and it's such a great thing, because I love the fact, like you guys always say, all you guys that I talk to, it's like, a reader isn't going to just read one book. Okay, because
Right.
we're crazy people. I read tons of books all the time, and I'm not the only one, you know. And
Right.
when you can get us, and you can see it in your reviews, like, I got them, I did it, you know. And you did. You got me.
Well,
You
thank
got
you.
me. I mean,
Thank you.
Iris is amazing. And I mean, nothing in my life mirrors Iris, okay? I've never been with a crazy person. I've never, you know, but I really fell for her. I do have a brother. So maybe that's kind of why. I have a brother that's 18 months younger than me, so I don't remember not having him. So
Mhm.
even though they're twins, which
Mhm.
I loved too,
Mhm.
because it gave that other element to it, but I really attached on to her, like, journey, and, like, you know, trying to find the truth. And she could have
Yeah.
just been like, whatever, but, you know, of course that's not what she does. And she, you know, she wants the truth, and,
Yeah.
you know, and in her way of finding it, it was crazy. But how did you think of her? Like, how did you come up with this story? Did you see the whole thing, or did it kind of like evolve as you were writing it?
Well, I came up with the story basically after some brainstorming with my editor. She was like, "What's next?" And I had to kind of scramble and come up with a story. So, I mean, it was really just a product of, okay, what could be the worst possible thing that could happen to a person? How about a plane crash? You know, and it just kind of rolled from there. But I work with an outline. So I had, like, you know, taken the whole story and thought it out and outlined it chapter by chapter. And that's what I presented to my editor. I got her approval, and then I sat down to write it. So really, I mean, things changed along the way in the outline. I went back, like, after I had written it and looked at my outline. And for example, Evan was nowhere in my outline. He was someone who walked into that scene at the botanical gardens at the memorial.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, who's this guy? What's he doing here? But he kind of, you know, filled this really important role in the story. He wasn't necessarily planned, but when he walked in, I was like, oh, he's a keeper, you know, and he definitely had something to say, and a purpose in the story. So, you know, things change as I'm writing, but really, like, the ending, I knew the ending. When I sat down to write the story, I knew how it was going to end.
I did not know. I have to tell you, I really didn't. I mean, I sat there, I had it on my Kindle, and when I read it, I just did it the other day, and I read the end, and I'm like, what? I did not see that coming at all. I was like, I loved it, but I was just like, I mean, my mouth dropped open. So, if you know, that's a good thing, right?
Well, right, for sure. Thank you. That's a huge compliment too.
Yeah, it was crazy. Just because of the way you laid it out, it was just like, whoa, I did not see that coming.
Yeah.
So it was
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, I wanted, I mean, she was very in love with him. So it was
Yes.
always, as I was writing, it was a balance between her grief and her anger, right? Because
Right.
as the story progresses, she's finding out all these things about her husband and realizing that he's maybe not the person that she thought he was. So, but at the same time, I mean, the whole story takes place over, with the exception of that last chapter, it takes place over, I think, 13 or 14 days.
Right.
So you don't just fall out of love with someone in that amount of time, right? It
Right.
takes a lot longer and you have to process. So her emotions were like up to here
Right.
as she's going through this story, and balancing out the grief with the anger and the resentment and the truth was always in a difficult balance as I was writing it.
I loved her family too. I became really attached to her family because I didn't have that. And
Yeah.
so I was like, oh, look at her mom's trying to do her dad. They were like the perfect parents. And,
Yeah. My editor was actually like, her parents are a little boring. I said, good. That's exactly how I want them, because I wanted them to be that kind of silent supportive force in her life that maybe isn't super exciting off the page, but for this particular story I
oh,
thought
yeah.
worked really well. And then Dave, her brother, her twin brother, I wanted to give her someone who was going to be 100% backing her up in everything she did, and
Yeah.
maybe kind of holding a mirror up to her. And really the only person that would do that without question for a reader would be a sibling, I think. And
Yeah.
then I love the idea of twins. I just
Me
think that's
too.
cool. I always wanted to be a twin.
Yeah, I did too. Like I said, my brother and I were kind of raised like twins, even though we have an age difference. But that would have been totally us. I was like, she wrote
Yeah.
that so perfect, because that would have been us, especially at that age.
Yeah.
We're a little older now, but I don't know if I cares as much anymore. but at that age, when you're just really going through stuff, and and he's going through his stuff, but I just love that they like hunkered down and like stayed with her. Like I just thought that was so cool. That's what like I said, I didn't have that, so I was like, oh, look at, and her mom's just trying to bake for her and cook for her and stuff.
That was actually one of the voices that was really strong in my head. He said things that, were outside of the story. Like in my normal life, I would hear snarky little comments occasionally. And he
Yeah.
just was a real strong presence in my head. I just thought he was really cool. I kind of missed him when I was done with this story.
Yeah, I'm finding, like, especially recently, like I'll read a book and it stays with me. Like this book kind of stayed with me a little bit,
Yeah.
Even though I have to read a lot of books, I keep going. I'm like, there's like a part of me that's still in that story, that it's still in my head. And I think that's a good thing too,
Yeah, for sure.
Like, yeah, you don't want it to end, but even when it ends, you're just like, I'm still in Iris's world, and I'm still feeling for her, and and I did pick out a favorite quote, and I did see that some other people did, which I'm never always happy about, because I like to pick my own, but I always check to, but then it's sometimes when I pick my own, I'm like, why didn't anybody else find this? But whatever. Nobody can make me happy about that. But my favorite quote was, "This is what death does. It forces intimacy, at the same time it snatches it away." And because I've had, both my parents have passed away. I just had an uncle passed away. And it's interesting because my uncle that passed away was sick, wasn't a shock. He was older, but all of us cousins did, like people, cousins that I hadn't talked to in years, you kind of just like, it attaches you again. Even cousins you've lost touch with and moved away, and it brings everybody back to like, oh, okay, does anybody need anything, or is any, and I was like, oh, I never thought of it that way. It, like, as you're losing someone, you're also gaining back these people that'll just always be there,
Yeah.
So I love that. But I mean, when you wrote that, like when you come up with a quote, were you like, oh my gosh, everybody's gonna love this quote? Like,
I sometimes you can like beat your head against the wall coming up with just the right way to phrase something, but that was one of those sentences that as I was writing that scene, it just kind of like came out, and as soon as I wrote it, I was like, yes, that is exactly what I wanted to say, exactly how I wanted to say it. If I knew how to do that more often, it writer, but that was one of them that it just came out that way. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know what? I always think if I can find one quote a book, I'm happy because there are
Yeah.
a lot of times I can't. You know,
Yeah.
not that something doesn't just stop me and I'm like I got to write it down. Like
Yeah.
it stops me that when I'm reading and I have to write it down, then I know. And I'll get
Yeah.
through. Sometimes I get through a whole book and I'm like, I didn't find anything, and it happens, But
Yeah.
so
That's
you should
right.
if you get one that makes somebody stop and write it down, I think that's really good. But I was looking on your website and I found something out that's kind of interesting in my life right now is that my daughter, I have 6 children, but my youngest daughter is headed to the Netherlands.
For like to live?
No, she's headed
Oh.
there. She goes to Penn State. I'm in Pennsylvania, and she's going there for a work study program for a couple of weeks. And so she's doing all this research on the Netherlands.
Is she going to be in Amsterdam or somewhere else?
I think she's going to be a little bit outside of Amsterdam. I know it's close to there, but I don't
What
think she's
university? Do you know?
I don't know which one she's going. That is a good question. And I'm just in the process of setting up her international calling and, worrying about mom things that I didn't even ask that question. But I know she's been looking up all this like Dutch stuff and, because she wants to fit in, I guess, to some point, but she has to do a video project. While she's there. And I don't even know much about that. But when I saw that you'd live, I'm like, that is bizarre.
Yeah, I even have one kid there. He's at a university there, which is why I was asking which university she was going to be with. But he's in grad school there. And then, yeah, both my kids were born there. We lived there for 12 years. I speak the language. It's a lovely, lovely country. It's
whenever
gorgeous.
I think of the Netherlands, I think of Van Halen. Because they're the only ones I know that came from the Netherlands.
That's funny.
And I've heard that I've talked to a lot of authors because a lot of books are written about them, but they said that whenever they would be on tour and they'd be fighting, they always fought in Dutch. Because English was their second language, and it was nobody
It
knew.
is easier to express things like when you're really heated or emotional. It's easier in your mother tongue, I guess. So
Right. Well, you know what? If I could, I'm gonna tell her about you. Like maybe she can email you if she has any questions because she's kind of terrified. But she's 23. I think she can handle it.
She's gonna love it there. She's gonna love it. When is she going? Is she going to be there in the spring?
Yeah, she's going March 1st.
She's going to be there like with all the tulips and stuff. She's going to love it.
Yeah, and she's kind of my world. Like she spent some time in Italy and she's like, I don't know, my other daughter has babies. She's on her 3rd pregnancy and married. And, but Annie is like I want to travel all through Europe and I want to, she just wants to do things. So when this trip became available, like she signed up right away. It was like a no-brainer. And I was like, why'd you pick there? She's like, I don't care. I just want to be in Europe. I just want to, experience as much of it as I can. So
you better hope she doesn't meet a Dutch boy and fall in love, right? That's what happened to me.
She's going with her boyfriend. So right. Maybe that's why, because she signed up for the trip and then he did like later, but maybe he was thinking that. So he was like, I better go in.
Dutch boys are cute.
Well, I know. Look at them. They are cute. But I just thought it was like, oh my gosh, I never came across anyone. I'm like, if she has any, I'm going to give her your email in case she wants to ask.
I can tell her where to go, what to eat, what to see.
Yeah, and like, she's my, what to wear girl. She's more concerned with what should I wear? What should I do? How can I look good while I'm there? And, but anyway, I thought that was really cool when I saw that today, and I didn't even have a chance to tell her yet. So, and you lived there. How long did you live there?
12 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, both my kids were born there. They went to Dutch schools, and
it looks beautiful. The pictures I've seen of it. I mean, it really looks beautiful.
We lived right in the middle of all the tulip area. So, I mean, it's incredibly gorgeous.
Oh, that's awesome. So you have a book coming up that we're going to talk about in another video, but I just wanted to let everybody know that this book is coming out because The Marriage Lie was your 3rd book.
Correct,
right?
yes.
Okay, and so you've got a 4th book coming up, but
I do.
3 Days Missing. So is this another, like,
And new covers. I
Yes.
just got these in the other day, so yeah, I'm super excited about it. It
Is it
comes out in June 26th.
okay?
And do you want me to give a little spiel
Oh
about it?
yeah, definitely. Because we're going to talk about it, but we're going to talk about when everybody can go buy it. So
Oh,
you can
good.
definitely get everybody hyped up about it.
Yeah. So it's a story about a little boy who goes on an overnight trip with his class, his second grade class, to Dahlonega, Georgia, just north of Atlanta, and goes missing from the cabin where he's staying in the middle of the night. And so the story is from the perspective of his mother and another mother from the class who has a son. And the two boys didn't get along at all. And just kind of bounce back and forth between them as they're searching for this boy and trying to figure out who took him and why and what the other mother has to do with it. And I'm not going to tell you anything more than that.
Ooh, I like it. I already like it. So it is the same. It's in the same kind of genre that your
Yes.
your
Yes.
other book was in.
Yeah.
So that's
Absolutely.
awesome.
Domestic suspense all the way. Yeah.
Right,
It's
yeah.
such a fun genre to write. My first two books, they kind of straddled the line between women's fiction and suspense. And my publisher and I were talking, and they were like, "We think you would do really well in suspense. Your voice is good for it. Do you think you could write it?" And that was actually The Marriage Lie came from that discussion. So they were right, and it's really the perfect spot for me and for the way that I like to write and this kind of stories that I like to tell. So yeah, I'll stick here for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, because you have to be really, to write the character that you're very sympathetic,
Mhm.
and that's why I said I found I was so in her head,
Mhm.
and that's hard to do. But in order to make it work, like
Mhm.
that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
Is like as the reader is you have to get in their head and then that's when it just keeps unfolding and unfolding, because
Exactly.
otherwise suspense doesn't work right. You
Right.
have to be like right there in their head and I thought you did that really well.
Well, thanks.
I can't wait to read the next one. So anyway, hold up The Marriage Lie because you guys can all get this now. And I love that. I love that it's a wedding band. I think that is so
I
cool.
know, right?
I just love that.
And I love the way that the lie is like engraved
Yes.
in the
Yes.
van.
Which
Yeah.
I just saw today because, sometimes on Kindle you can't really see the cover very well. But when I was
Uh-huh.
looking at the cover, I was like, oh, it's in the band. Lies in the band. I love that. I love these people that design books. I love it. I love
Yeah.
when they come up with a great cover.
It's amazing. I was just actually at the offices in Toronto, and I got to sit down with the person who was in charge of my covers, and
Hmm.
to hear all the backstory and the thought that goes into it, and I got to see some of the attempts before they got to specifically this book, 3 Days Missing.
Right.
Um, it's fascinating. I mean, they're looking at trends in covers in the market, what sells well, what doesn't. They're thinking about, title plus cover. I mean, it's a lot. It's a science
It
that
really
I didn't
is.
understand until I actually saw.
Yeah, I was talking to one author who was telling me that her book cover had come out, and then they realized that there were a bunch of new books that had this, like they were all black. Let's just pick black. I don't remember, but say they were all like three other books released at that time in
Mhm.
black, and they went back and they changed it. And I was like,
Yeah.
I never thought about that because they were like, we don't want it to get lost in the stand,
Yeah.
of black covers. And I was like, you
Yeah.
think about like I don't know, it's such a marketing thing
Yeah.
just the cover. And I am a cover person, but I mean, they are trying to really market like what your
Yeah.
eye goes to,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And then they show it to, some sales and marketing people, some buyers for the big box stores. And if
Yeah.
they don't like it, it's back to the drawing board.
Wow. But it is. I've seen, people on Twitter and Facebook that's what they do for a living, and they are amazing. Like because they show off their covers, and I'm like, wow, that is
Yeah.
really, and to capture the story because
Uh,
they read your book and they've got to capture that the
yeah.
essence of your book in a cover.
Right.
So
I don't know how they do it.
I don't know how they do it.
I'm glad someone out there is doing it for me. Let's put it that way.
Well,
Because
you get to see like all the different when you publish a book, you get to see like, what your editor does, what the publisher does. I mean, it's more than a person. It's more than a
yeah,
one person gig and
full village.
it's a village. Well, thank you, Kimberly. I can't wait to talk about the next book. We'll be in touch, and thank you for this interview. I really enjoyed reading the book. It was really good. So I'm so happy we got to talk about it.
Same here.
Okay,
Thanks.
have a great day. Bye-bye.
All right, you too. Bye.
Isn't she amazing? I am so happy that I got to meet Kimberly. I cannot wait to talk to her again about her new book. I can't wait to read her new book. But this book, The Marriage Lie, guys, go get it. It is so good, okay? And I'm going to have all of Kimberly's all her links on Facebook or wherever she is, you'll be able to find under this video. So you guys can go buy it. I'll have the Amazon link. And thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this, please hit like. And if you want to get my videos every day, please hit subscribe.